hot off the heels of pissing off anyone who was excited about the Kinfall or the Quinfall, whatever it is, how about some more controversy? Like, controversy is like a thing, right? Like, that's a good idea. Totally doesn't make me, get me comments that make me cry at night. So, over the years, I've had some controversial opinions about MMORPGs, ones that I've had for a long time, just as a player, as well as a content creator. And I wanted to go over 5 of those most controversial opinions that I have with you, so you can hit the dislike button, I guess, and get mad at me. Well, let's get the ball rolling on the rage, or maybe some of you might actually, agree with me, just quietly. So all of it comes at me and not you.
Torment. Its wretched kingdoms quake beneath my rage.
Cataclysm was cool. Let me explain this one. I'm not necessarily talking about mechanics, raids, or anything like that. What I'm thinking of is actually going back long before Blizzard decided to change their game world with a cataclysmic event. Something they're kind of doing again with WoW Classic this year. I'm talking about something older. Much older. I'm remembering the tagline from a trailer for EverQuest that called it a living, breathing world. The reality of this is what made the MMO dynamic was often the players, not the world itself. Within a few years, GM events had come and gone, and the tech wasn't really there for any kind of dynamic seasons or anything like that. Cataclysm, on the other hand, added a permanent dynamic to the game, a world-altering event. It changed the very face of the game in the zones that were beloved. And to many, that was absolutely infuriating. You can still see the echoes of that anger with so many players now upset about WoW Classic having their own Cataclysm again. For my audience who are staunch devotees of EverQuest, for example, a lot of similar anger could be like the revamps to Freeport and the revamps to Nectulos Forest, those kind of things, changing the zones that had been a certain way for a very long time. I think one of the things that makes Cataclysm different is there was a specific in-world reason for it. The world story itself was what was dictating the change. Not so much, oh, you know what, our game is getting really freaking old, so we need to make it look not so shit so we can maybe get new players. Which is essentially probably what they were saying when any zone revamp or graphics revamp is coming out, seeing a dip in new players and thinking, well, hey, new graphics will change it. Usually doesn't. But it's one of those things that I really think, when done well, can make a game feel more alive. The world of the game feel more alive. I do know that it is a frustrating thing for a lot of players because, one, you may feel like you are losing out on content that you are no longer able to do, and 2, because change is fucking scary. I get it. It's the human condition. I personally really liked Cataclysm, especially playing it the first time. It was a kind of magical experience for me, getting to kind of feel and experience world history in a created world. As the thing that would be kind of similar would be like jumping into EverQuest 2 for the very first time. A completely different world that was still the same world, If you don't hate me yet, you might on the next one. So if that last one didn't get me a hate thread on Reddit in our MMORPG, this one might. Pay for convenience doesn't bother me that much. Specifically, what I mean here is that pay for convenience is less of a issue for me than pay for cosmetics. An experience potion here or there don't bother me as much as putting cosmetics, putting art behind paywalls. I say this from having experienced games that have all but completely abandoned anything but paid cosmetics. It serves a dual negative purpose, deconstructing item identity because they all get covered up with cosmetics anyway, or as well as pulling away all that time and work in construction of non-paid items to the ones that actually make more money for them. This, I mean, a lot of this may just be because I played older games like EverQuest where items had both a look and items had a distinct like feeling to them. Like when you saw someone wearing golden Nefriti boots, you knew what the hell they were. And that made you want them more because the item had an identity. It was not randomized items that all looked the same. And then you throw in cosmetics and that kind of takes away from that. In a lot of these games where there is a focus on the cosmetics, the non-cosmetic items are kind of the scraps. If we go back to EverQuest, it may actually be one of the worst offenders to this, despite kind of having both cosmetics and convenience in it. EverQuest has had the same base armor appearance since 2001 when they launched Lucklin. When they finally began adding in different armor all the way in 2012, it came with a paid cosmetic update called Heroes Forge, something that would later be revamped to be a little bit less egregious. And to the credit of the team that came after Heroes Forge came out, most of the cosmetics that are now used in Heroes Forge are actually dropped items. They're not things that you pay for. However, you still have to pay to be able to use the actual feature of those cosmetics. You can get the drops, sure, but you can't use them unless you've already paid once per character to be able to use the paid cosmetics. If you pay nothing at all with it when it comes to EverQuest with your armor is going to look exactly the way it did. And I'm like, there is no difference whatsoever. It will look exactly the way it did in 2001. That is frustrating as hell. Like when you add new art to the game, but then you paywall it, that's a huge frustration for me. And then you add in that even though most of this armor is dropped and that's how it goes, EverQuest does still have seasonal loot boxes. Seasonal loot boxes, or not even seasonal, just like loot boxes that they have for an undetermined amount of time with different chances at armor pieces. Anyway, enough about EverQuest, because there's other games that have this issue too. Guild Wars 2, Elder Scrolls Online. There are so many games. One of the biggest offenders is going to be Black Desert Online. Games that hide armor that actually has distinctive looks to it behind paywalls because they know that you will pay it. And I think in a lot of ways, this has become the microtransaction that is like the lesser of multiple evils. Like, okay, well, you know what? At least we have we don't have the boost, or we don't have this, we don't have that. We don't have actual stat gear. You just have the stuff that people can look at, and that to me, I would much prefer a 20% experience potion. Give me people having 20% XP pots the level boosts instead of the cosmetics. For the most part, in any game, you're going to have those two anyway. So maybe I'm just wanting them to just take out the cosmetic shit because you're already getting multiple forms of monetization in pretty much every single MMO that exists at this point. We lost the war on microtransactions. I think I'm going to do a video on that. Now this next one, because I want to bring back some support, because I don't want you to hate me, right? This next one, I might actually have some support on. It's all about hard barriers. See, I know at the very least, a lot of us have been frustrated by hard barriers in the past. When I say hard barriers, I'm talking about the level caps, the things that prevent you from playing with your friends. Things like in the game, hard numbers or things like that say you are not allowed to group with this person because of this reason. I mean, hell, most recently, World of Warcraft Season of Discovery had a hard barrier just to raid. Meaning it doesn't matter if you want to try to raid at a lower level, you simply can't. It took away agency of the player in some ways, and also split the player base. If you were level 24, you couldn't raid. If you were level 25, you could. And that is a very, very hard cutoff. But perhaps the most well-known example of this are going to be level caps. You are not able to group with your friends because They are 4, 5, 6, 7 levels higher than you. Basically, you join a group together and you can't do anything. There is functionally no way that the lower level person can get any benefit whatsoever. And there's probably no point to the other person being in group either. Essentially, the game has found a way to split you from your friends. Games that often rely on social components have said, we don't want you to be social. And the reasoning generally tends to be around like things like, well, they don't want the game to be too easy because if you have a friend who's high level, they could just make the game easy for you. But why? Why does that have to be the thing that gets enforced? Why is that the line? Why is that where we, like, when you already have things like experience potions and all this shit, why is that the line that we have to draw? That's where we have to. And plus, there's plenty of, like, there's always other ways to power level in games. Maybe it's because they want you to buy their level boosts. Maybe. It's interesting because some of the newer games like Elder Scrolls Online and Guild Wars 2, while I'm not always a fan of how they have gone about it, they have managed to kind of find ways around this through kind of agnostic leveling or level specific zones and things like that that change to you. So they have found that the technology certainly exists to improve on, let's say, what EverQuest 2 with their mentor system, which didn't really always work out. There was always still the fear of having someone who's super overpowered, just kind of like dragging along a lower level. But at the very least, there was a way to go about it without having to try and do like out of group stuff or, you know, trying to find all these different ways to just play with your damn friends. I think at this point in going forward, 2024 and beyond for MMOs, it doesn't make sense to just not have some form of mentor system at the very least. Like that should be the minimum. A way for you to bring your friends into the game. If I am level 60 playing Final Fantasy 14 or playing whatever game, playing Guild Wars 2 or EverQuest or World of Warcraft, let me play with my level 1 friend who just started playing that day. And let me play in a way where it's beneficial, at least in some ways to both of us. Whether it's like taking my level down, whether just let me play with them. Hard barriers feel like something that was unnecessary, a thing that was tied to like fear of competition. You're already going to have people exploiting competition anyway. Just at least like don't harm the people that just want to play with their friends. Now this next one, this fourth one, I think is going to be perhaps the most divisive one. It's going to be really fucking divisive. And it's that I feel that single player stories hurt an MMORPG. At this point, as much as I've covered MMOs and played MMOs, I appreciate the hard and diligent work that goes into MMOs like Final Fantasy 14, Guild Wars 2, and Elder Scrolls Online and their single player stories. I think the stories that focus on you as the central character in a shared world inherently cheapen the world lore. It's not that it can't be done well, just that there's kind of like a trade-off. For an RPG, I want a stunning, emotional, and beautiful story where I am the center. In an MMO, I want the same depth, but in the world itself. I mean, hell, refer back to what I was saying about the Cataclysm in the first point. That's a world story, not a personal story. I think when you focus so much on this individual story, instead of just like basically expanding upon side quests, there's no reason why you can't have side quests with like deep, like, emotional cinematics and stuff. But at the very least, it's a side quest that's focusing on the world and not just, oh, this one individual. You were the chosen one. Because I think that like is a factor, kind of like the hard barrier. It's more like a soft barrier where it pulls you away from the MMO part and sits you in the RPG part. I don't think that these games were ever meant to be MMORPG, which a lot of them have come to be that way. I think one of the ones that really comes to mind is Star Wars: The Old Republic. It has a fantastic RPG story. It's great. It's not in any way tied to the MMO. But in recent like expansions, I think they've tried to pull in more stuff that is world-based. I mean, stuff like even the Rack Ghoul Plague, that is a world story, not necessarily a personal story. Like that kind of stuff. Put more energy into that and less energy into you personally. The one person out of the millions playing are the chosen one in this entire game. Sorry to everybody who really loves Final Fantasy XIV. It's a good game. It really is. Just, I don't like the chosen one story. Okay, so I don't even want to tell you this fifth one. I think this fifth one is gonna be a banger. Oh shit. Okay, before we even get to this fifth one, I want something to be in your mind right now. If you have played EverQuest 2 at any point in time, if you played it in the beginning or you played it more recently, just remember how it feels to log in now to EverQuest 2 compared to how it felt when you were first playing the game. Because I think that at a certain point, MMORPGs should do a stat squish, at the very least, maybe even a level squish.
Move this man!
World of Warcraft has done this, obviously, and it was divisive. And in part, it was divisive because there is both a real and perceived loss of power. There's this feeling that by lowering the numbers, you're basically taking this huge continuum and squishing it down. So if you were on this edge over here and this person's over here, well, now you're closer. And so because MMOs rely so much on competition, whether it's a PvP MMO or a PvE MMO, this idea of squishing that and kind of like evening the playing field a little bit, it's frustrating to a lot of players. But I think that there gets to be a point when an MMO gets so old because you can only add so many damn numbers where it becomes necessary. It's this number bloat that happens within MMOs. There's a lot of bloat that happens in MMOs, and I think in this case, I'm mostly just talking about like reducing both the number bloat and maybe even like skill bloat or system bloat that happens when your MMO has been going for 20 years. EverQuest 2 is my prime example of a game that I think would really benefit from a stat and level squish. Take all that stuff and just squish it down. Get rid of all this excess fluff. Get rid of the billion numbers that are flooding. Like it's a human psychology thing where we struggle with large numbers. You have NPR articles talking about how our primitive ass brains cannot handle super big numbers. When you ask someone to conceptualize a billionaire versus a millionaire, it's very difficult for them to do it because the understanding of the difference between a million and a billion is harder to comprehend with our brains, myself included. I struggle with big ass numbers, okay? It's such a thing that I get worried when I see new games that, like if I'm a level 1 that's hitting for 1K and the game has 60 levels, I'm really concerned. Every upgrade, every power increment becomes harder to maintain. But those are my my 5 most controversial MMO opinions. I'd love to hear what you think about those opinions in the comment section below, because this primitive brain is gonna go lay down and take a nap. My name is Redmond Flynn. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.